Okay, so we're recording today's session because we want to be able to share this with others that we know are interested, but maybe not be able to attend at this time. And this is all about exciting and actually really significant and world-leading work that is happening in the UK around responsible device reuse, donation, how we can meet multiple challenges at the same time. My name is Emma Stone. I'm Director of Evidence and Engagement at Good Things Foundation. We're the UK's leading digital inclusion charity. I'm delighted to hand over now for words of welcome and some context setting to Rebecca Stevens from DSIT, Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Emma, for that introduction. Such a good sort of context setting, and I ought to say there are very few things on such a sunny day like this that you're truly excited to join, but this is definitely one of them. Thank you. In terms of context, I'm Rebecca Stevens. I'm the Deputy Director of the Digital Inclusion and Skills Unit here in DSIT. So that acronym means the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology in Government, which is a relatively new department set up under this government. And I hope by now, given the interest in this community in digital inclusion, that you may have seen that on the 26th of February of this year, we published ours and the government's Digital Inclusion Action Plan, showing how the government plans to address digital exclusion. And I think the key thing to mention there is that one of the fundamentals of that is through partnership. But for us, after some consultation last year, you may well know that we have had a call for evidence as well this year. There are 4 focus areas that we are targeting. One is skills, the other is data and device poverty, digital services, and building confidence. And in this context, devices are a fundamental part of our access pillar, because we know that without access to a device, people can't complete critical online activity, which is so broad and including jobs applications, schoolwork, benefit applications. And one of our first 5 actions, and we'll talk a bit about this, is our proof of concept multi-departmental device donation, which is quite a mouthful, pilot with the Digital Poverty Alliance. And I'm going to hand over to Ellie in my team, who has been working on this so closely and diligently over the last few months, to give a little bit more context about this really genuinely brilliant project. So Ellie, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So as Rebecca said, my name's Ellie Richardson and I am the head of device donation here at the Digital Inclusion and Skills Unit, and I will be presenting on the government's device donation pilot with our brilliant partner, who is Elizabeth Anderson from the Digital Poverty Alliance. So I will quickly hand over to her for an introduction on who she is and what the Digital Poverty Alliance do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ellie. We are so excited about this. So I'm Elizabeth. I'm the Chief Executive here at the DPA. We are a national charity, so we cover England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and we were founded over 20 years ago, originally with a bit of a different focus. But now we're bringing together every sector and indeed individuals, so government, industry, charity, schools, lots of others working nationally or locally. And we support thousands of families every year. We believe we're the only national charity that people can turn to as an individual and then receive a laptop and direct help from us. So we've helped coming up for 5,000 people over the past couple of years. And we also run a number of key advocacy and research programs. And this very nicely fits into both.
Amazing. Thanks, Elizabeth. So I will be giving a quick overview of the pilot itself. And As Rebecca mentioned, when we published our Digital Inclusion Action Plan on the 26th of February, we had a series of first 5 actions, and they are our leading actions that we want to deliver on in 2025. And under the access pillar, which includes telecoms and devices, we committed to piloting a proof of concept multi-departmental device donation scheme. And what that means is that hopefully by the end of this pilot in autumn 2025, we will have data sets which can point very clearly towards why device donation is a brilliant thing that other government departments should be involved in. And also, this is a pilot that encompasses the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, the Department for Energy and Net Zero, and the Department for Business and Trade. It is across 3 departments. And we are working with the brilliant Digital Poverty Alliance to repurpose end-of-life government devices and distribute them to those who need them. And in order to do this, we worked really closely with what we call our Integrated Corporate Services, or ICS, which I will be referring to them as going forward. And ICS provides the corporate services for those 3 departments that I mentioned, and they specifically lead on the commercial and digital aspects of how a department is run. So that includes providing the IT, looking at our commercial contracts, etc. And what ICS did in this pilot is that they guided us through the commercial requirements of the pilot and provided the logistics of how something that is actually very seminal, like this pilot, would work. And in terms of our aims throughout this pilot, we wanted to demonstrate to other government departments that this is a brilliant idea. That is our overarching goal, aside from obviously fixing the digital divide and donating these devices. We really want to set a precedent for other departments to demonstrate how amazing this is. So we wanted to understand, how can you deliver effective device donation schemes in government and set an example to others? And at the moment, we anticipate that the pilot will end in about autumn 2025. And we have set a very ambitious goal of donating 500 devices. But at the moment, we are still seeing how it goes. And I'm sure we'll be reporting back soon on whether we manage to hit our target. But I will pass over to Elizabeth on how they have actually gone about delivering these devices.
Wonderful, thank you. So, as Ellie said, through ICS, the 3 departments who are involved in this allocate these devices. Now, these are machines, as Ellie said, that are at the end of their service, so they would have been being disposed of, and they are sent to the existing contracted disposal partner that government works with. There's no cost coming to government through any of this, which is incredibly important. Everything is based on this kind of cost recovery model, where some laptops are retained through the process to make sure all the costs are covered. Those then are collected and come to us, or more specifically, they come to our ITAD. Now, an ITAD is an IT asset disposal company. For those who haven't come across that before, asset disposal does not in this case mean actually disposing of it. We're not talking about destroying it, but it's the asset is being disposed of from the organisation and sort of released from their asset registry. So the company that we are working with who are doing this for us are Computer Recyclers UK, and they are basically QAing all of this, so making sure that everything works, it's fully functional, all the components are there, you know, no keys have fallen off, the webcam isn't broken, all that kind of thing. The last thing we want to do is be providing a device that then doesn't work when it gets to the user. What I will say are the devices that are coming through, the first batch we've had, which was a very exciting day when those landed, are all grade A and B. So again, if those are meaningless terms to you, they're either almost pristine grade A, or maybe they've got a light little bit of wear, but they're probably about the same as the laptop that you're using right now if you've had it a couple of years. Suitable people are verified, so we're currently, the first batch is going out through the existing waiting list. and we're going to be expanding this through some set areas, working with professional organisations to ensure that we know each and every person that's receiving a device, but that need is really genuine, and they're going to be receiving that device through a community-led organisation. This will be a very dignified process. So then when those devices arrive, they've got two options. They can go and collect that from their referrer, or it can arrive at their home. And that's incredibly important, because this is about making sure that we're not saying, well, you're getting a free laptop, you'll do it the way that works for us. This is about doing things that work the way for that individual. They can also reach back out to us if they need any help. So say there is a bit of a problem with it, maybe they don't know how to start it up, maybe they forget their password, maybe something stops working in 2 weeks' time, we can deal with all that. And then, incredibly crucially, because this is a proof of concept, detailed reporting. So we are collecting a lot of information from each person who is going to benefit from this device. And I know that we're going to talk about the reporting in a moment, but this really kind of links into the current level of access that individuals have, the skills they have, how they've come to us, and the geographical spread across the UK. And this is just a couple of quotes. We've got hundreds of these, but I put a couple down that were relevant to this scheme, because it's always good to remember that these are the actual people we're helping. It's not about us, it's about these people here. So carrying on, the people who are receiving this are people who've been verified as requiring access to a laptop. So in other words, they don't have access to a laptop or a keyboarded tablet at the moment, and they need that access for a purpose. Common reasons include education, access to find employment, or perhaps training as a pathway to employment. Maybe they need it for healthcare. Maybe they need it for a whole range of other essential services. And this also includes, particularly for older and isolated individuals, combating loneliness so that they actually can have some social networking of their own. As you can see, this includes a very, very wide group of people, including families with kids. This is predominantly where a lot of our support has historically gone, families with children and young people aged 16 to 25, but also older people, those who are experiencing unemployment, those who are working but on a very low income and perhaps need training in order to, improve their own social circumstances. Those who are domestic abuse survivors, people with health conditions, and refugees and asylum seekers. That's a pretty broad list, but there will be people who will have needs who don't necessarily fit into one of those categories.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And in terms of what are we measuring, the buzzword in this presentation seems to be proof of concept at the moment. And in order to firstly demonstrate how successful this scheme has been, where we need to improve things, and bring people along on that journey, if we're going to be demonstrating how brilliant device donation is, we need the data to support that. So poor Elizabeth has received a long list of messages from myself, asking for her to collect certain information from the recipients of the device. And the main thing that we have asked the Digital Poverty Alliance to collect for us is the number of people who were previously digitally excluded who now have access to a device. Because if we are going to really measure the growth that this program could generate and is generating, that is a very key statistic for us to take a look at. However, we also sent over a wide range of other pieces of data that we would have wanted Elizabeth to collect, which includes the geographical spread of the distribution. So we wanted to see whether certain impacts of device donation were being felt in certain areas, and why is this the case? And then finally, looking at more granular qualitative data on why individuals are using these devices. Are they using them for schoolwork, job applications, finances? And this means that we can look at the elements of confidence that come into digital inclusion. So why are people wanting to use the internet, and what are they doing with these devices? So to summarize why we went for these metrics, as I'm sure all of you know, the issue with digital inclusion is that we don't have a lot of data on the individuals who are digitally excluded. And in order for us to make strong evidence-based interventions, we do need to collect the data in order to justify them. So the DPA collecting this data on the individual recipients will be so useful for us, not only to demonstrate why digital inclusion is amazing and why departments should be engaging in device donation, it will also help us with our wider digital inclusion efforts and planning for the future. So yeah, moving on onto what we have been learning.
Just to say, Ellie and Elizabeth, I think I'm a bit worried we're not going to have enough time for questions. So maybe if you could pick up the pace, that would be really helpful.
I'll do the short version. So there's a lot of things we've already learned. I mean, we've been doing this for a while. We take a lot of donated devices, whether it's from one person or whether it's from sort of hundreds from an organisation. But things that we have particularly started to say with this scheme already, huge demand since the announcement. People, you'd think we had millions of devices. We don't. We've got 500 coming. The cost recovery part is fundamental, and this is a big part for us, but it does mean the organisation has to understand that not every device that's donated is going to end up in hands. Something has to cover the cost of licensing and cleaning and all that kind of thing. The chain of agreement takes time. Ellie spoke a little bit about the role that ICS played, that kind of contractual role and ensuring that everyone's happy with the security, the environmental credentials, the plan going forward. That is incredibly important. And something that's been so helpful for us as a charity is having broken devices, the really broken devices that will never work again, filtered out so that that's not a cost coming onto us in terms of the disposal. That's the short version.
Yeah, and I will provide an incredibly quick summary of what we've been learning from a government perspective. And the first thing is that it's essentially bringing people along for the journey and demonstrating to other departments and to teams that you are working with, for example, ICS, like I mentioned, it's bringing everyone along on that journey and aligning everyone to that same goal, which is distributing more devices to digitally excluded people. And I think something that has really struck me the most is learning from people who know best. Obviously, there are so many charities out there that have already been doing so much on device donation and digital inclusion. And I think it's been so helpful to have their support and their expertise in setting up these schemes and knowing what works best. So yeah, that's my main reflection going forward with this. And I will quickly hand over to Elizabeth.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, the focus at the moment has been on people who are on our existing off-programme waiting list, so people who've speculatively approached us from anywhere in the UK, and the organisations that they are, the organisations and the individuals those people are representing. Get the words in the right order, always helps. We will then have a Tech for Communities programme, which will open up the ability to access these devices within some dedicated areas without raising expectations too high on how many 500 can support. Get in touch if you've got any questions. I'll put my LinkedIn in the chat as well. Oh, I think I'm probably speaking to this half of this one as well. So our main what's next is more devices going out. So as mentioned, that first batch came in a few days ago. We're looking forward to many more batches coming in, hopefully every month until autumn. And our big focus is on that impact reporting, so gathering that data and that evidence and then doing the analysis that is going to prove what Ellie was talking about earlier.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And from my side, from the DSIT side, what I am hoping for come autumn is that I will have a lot of lovely data to provide our analysts with, which includes what went well and were there any surprises, where can we improve it? And after this, I guess it's a whole idea of proof of concept. We're going to be looking at how we can scale the pilot, expand the pilot up across government and encourage device donation to become that standard practice across government and other departments. So that is our hope. And I will quickly summarize how you can reach out to us. We've got our email addresses there. And for those of you who very kindly contributed to our call for evidence, you're already familiar with the digital inclusion mailbox. So please do send inquiries to those email addresses as well. But yeah, thank you. And I guess now we're opening up for the Q&A very quickly.
Yes. Actually, very, very quickly. Has anyone posted any questions in the chat? And Tash, I'm going to ask you if you can do the screen sharing, because otherwise I can't for the next slides. That'll make it easier for me.
No problem.
Okay, so I'm just scrolling through the chat. There are lots of comments, some links being shared, keenness to get more on metrics. A lot of support and real warm welcome for this. There's a question here about, maybe this is one more for Elizabeth, practical skills and additional support offered once the device is distributed, whether devices are SIM enabled, software packages. There's a whole load of information there, but I suppose essentially getting to the what are people able to receive from you once they get a device?
Absolutely. So they will receive a resources pack that includes a printed guide with little pictures of how to set up the device for the first time. They will also receive signposting to a number of different online training schemes with information about how to access those. They will receive advice about where they can access local support for that. And they will also have our contact details so they can reach back out to us if they've got a question or a problem and they need to phone us and just talk it through. The laptops are not SIM enabled, but we do provide as many SIM cards as we can for people to be able to put into their own mobile. And where possible, we are looking at whether we can provide some dongles as well out of our own funding to be able to do that too. Software again, so we're not able to sadly fund at this moment all of the sort of office suite and that kind of thing, but again we signpost in the resources pack to open office and that kind of thing so that people know they can download free bits of kit that they need. Have I covered the rest of this? I think I have.
There are, so Elizabeth, that was a great response. There are a few questions coming up in the chat, and I wonder whether, in the interest of time, Elizabeth, you could reply in the chat to those questions. Just to let everyone know, yes, we will send out the slides from today so that you have access to those. And we can also find a way to share the chat panel. So some of those questions, we'll check in with you, Elizabeth, to get, and Ellie, to get them verified so that people have got all of that information to hand. So I am now going to hand back to Ellie to talk about the device donation charter.
Thank you, Emma. So if we just move on to the next slide, Tash. In essence, if there is one thing that I have learned as head of device donation, even if it has been for a couple of months, is that without a device, it is impossible to do those everyday essential digital tasks, for example, paying a bill, booking appointments, or doing homework. And so when you're faced with quite a confronting, revealing statistic like the one on the screen, over 1.5 million people in the UK don't have access to a basic laptop, tablet, or smartphone, it feels like very much a call for action, whether you're a minister or in a policy team. And we've been very lucky that our ministerial team is very passionate about device donation. And our Secretary of State has made it clear that he wants device donation to become a standard business procedure, whether you are in industry, whether you're in the public sector or the private sector. And that includes government as well. So this is the impetus as to why we came up with the idea of a industry charter, because it complements our device donation pilot so well. And we have drafted this charter with in organizations in order to make sure that it does suit and help everybody. We can move on to the next slide, Tash. So about the collaboration itself, the charter has been developed in collaboration with the Good Things Foundation, Vodafone, and Deloitte. And it came about as an industry pledge in our Digital Inclusion Action Plan. And the charter itself is a series of principles for organisations to pledge to, with the aim to increase the number of devices being donated to digitally excluded individuals, to reduce e-waste and promote circularity, and to reform how UK businesses manage their IT assets like laptops, phones, etc. And to complement the charter, we have been working on a playbook, which is a manual to help interested organisations along on their device donation journey. And Emma will be speaking to that later on in this session. And in terms of how we've been improving the charter on a very iterative basis, we have been really lucky to work with a working group comprised of 12 organisations who have been providing their fantastic expertise. And you can see the names of those organisations at the bottom of the slide. And they have been providing their feedback on how we can improve the charter and the processes that will be associated with it. Moving on. So in terms of what we want this charter to achieve, we want to address two problems, which is fixing the digital divide and increasing the number of donated devices to those digitally excluded individuals. But we also want to help address the UK's e-waste problem. And we want both private and public organisations to participate in the charter and device donation practices. And the reason why we've done this show and tell today is to really help organisations shift that dial and to get involved where they can. And we have been racking our brains for the kind of incentives that we really want organisations to realise when they do device donation. And this includes changing the lives of all of the people who do need the access to those secondhand devices and the access to the online world. Similar to those quotes that Elizabeth brought up, like actually making a real life tangible difference to people's lives. But also from an organizational perspective, device donation will help you being able to boost your ESG achievements and to boost your net zero contributions. And it's just a brilliant opportunity for organizations to be able to shout about how your organization is innovating to drive up the inclusion and sustainability. So all in all, there are a multitude of benefits for organizations when they get involved in device donation. And we really hope that the charter acts as a rallying cry for a lot of organizations to get involved. Amazing, thank you. And in terms of what kind of requirements are we expecting of signatories when they want to sign up to the charter? So in order to be a signatory, we want organisations to take what we term a reuse first approach. So that includes wanting signatories to become leaders in embedding device donation practices into their IT asset management approaches, and also to act as leaders in promoting the responsible disposal and reuse of IT assets, in essence, becoming leaders in this space. However, we also want signatories to essentially feel ready to implement device donation schemes within like the first 6 months of signing. So we want to really feel immediate and tangible action from this charter. And as Emma has mentioned previously, we want to ensure that the devices are of good quality, fit for purpose, and have an element of longevity to them. We want to make sure that they are high quality so people can really feel the benefits of device donation and accessing the online world. And finally, we will be putting some data reporting requirements on the signatories of the charter. As I mentioned when talking about the pilot, a real issue with digital inclusion is that we don't have a lot of data on these individuals, and it is really hard to create interventions when we don't have that data. So if you wish to be a signatory of the charter, we would like you to measure and report on the social and environmental benefits that you have seen from your device donation scheme, and to share those lessons learned with us so that our analysts can take them forward. And then just
Brilliant.
before I was going to say, Emma, quickly, before I pass over to you, I just wanted to mention a little bit about what it would look like if you did become a signatory. So if you do wish to become a signatory, once we have published the charter, we will have a sign up page for you where you can provide a bit more information and detail on how far along you are on your device donation journey. And the key thing that I would like everyone to take away from our management approach is that our process is intended to be fluid, and we are hoping to help all interested organisations get to the stage where they can implement device donation schemes. And if you have tried device donation before and it has not been successful, please do not be afraid of expressing your interest again. We really want interested organisations to identify the appropriate process for them, and hopefully the charter and playbook will enable organisations to do this. And as part of the charter, we do intend on holding regular check-ins with signatories to see how progress is going, where can we help if needed, and yeah, hopefully maximise the impact of the charter where possible. Sorry, Emma, just wanted to speak a little bit to that, but I will pass over to you for the playbook now.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Ellie. And it could well be that what you've also just mentioned is going to be an area where there might be some further questions. And so this is a reminder to everyone that hopefully we'll have some time at the end to take questions and answers. There's lots going on through the panel chat already. And do start to think if you've got questions about the charter as well. So I suppose I just wanted to say a couple of words about the Charter Toolkit before handing over to Rachel Evans from Vodafone UK and then to Jess Reddy from Deloitte UK. And I want to mention them alongside giving shout outs to advisory group members. I know Rob Benson from Liverpool City Region Combined Authority is in the room, Jess Black from Essex County Council is in the room, people like Alexandria Morgan. Just say there's been so much brilliant and pioneering work that has been happening in the space of tackling both the digital divide, tackling digital exclusion through securing, donating, refurbishing devices to get them out there. And so I mention that because the Charter Toolkit actually goes back to work that Good Things Foundation embarked on first with Deloitte, trying to understand the enablers and barriers. That was a few years ago, focused on commercial sector businesses. And then with University of Liverpool, really understanding what pioneers in the public sector are already doing in this area. And through all of that, and this is one of the reasons I'm so excited about the Charter, it's felt like there are an awful lot of people working hard who see this vision. And so what's brilliant about the Charter as a government-backed approach is that that could be a real game changer, because it could elevate this to other public sector organisations, other businesses. It could provide that confidence that this is an important, valued, valuable thing to be able to do. Being part of a movement also makes it easier for us to work collectively to get some of those metrics right, to see how this can be applied and used in social value and procurement, as well as the reporting on ESG goals. So it just feels like a phenomenal moment. And so this is partly saying the toolkit will be there. It wouldn't exist without the work that others have already done in order to develop their understanding around this. And also, it's not the end of the story. What we launch with the support of University of Liverpool, Vodafone UK, Deloitte and others in June is going to be the start of a story. And it's something that, with the government support through ongoing building of that learning, that sharing, that movement, we will just be able to create a much stronger playbook. So that's all I'm going to say about the Charter Toolkit. Big thanks to University of Liverpool for being willing to come on this journey with us. I'm going to hand over now, before I hand over to Natasha, sorry if you could go back a slide, Tash, to Rachel Evans from Vodafone, who's just going to say a bit about their journey and why they're involved in this.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Emma. Yeah, and I am going to keep this slide free for a couple of minutes and also try and keep it quite brief because I know that we've got lots of great content and discussion to get to. But it's really great to be here today. As Emma said, I'm Rachel Evans. I work at Vodafone UK in our sustainable business team, and I look after our social impact programs. And I think kind of just talking a little bit about our journey at Vodafone UK in this space is just to say that it is very much that. It's a journey. It's one that we've been on for probably about 5 years now. We're still on the journey. So I think what I would just say to a lot of people who are here, it can feel intimidating about where to start. And you might look at companies who are doing great things and think, oh gosh, how do we get there? Taking those first small steps is just as important. And I think there's hopefully lots of learning that you can all take from today and from the playbook that I'm so excited, the playbook and the manual that we will have that will help support you. But so at Vodafone, our kind of purpose is to connect for a better future. And we believe that everyone should have access to the benefits of a digital society. And I think for us, that's where it started, is how can we align this to what it is that we're trying to achieve as an organization. And so we kind of quite ambitiously maybe tried to launch this internally and externally at the same time from a device donation point of view. We kind of, and I think this also was something that helped us. We really had a rallying call to our customers and to our own business to get involved on this journey. And so we launched back in 2020, the Great British Tech Appeal, which was kind of a call to action to our customers to send in their secondhand devices, but also to our own business internally for our employee colleague mobile phones around how could we reuse those. And I think I might just quickly touch on what were kind of the top barriers that we faced when we were doing that journey. How did we overcome them? And maybe talk on some of that incentives piece as well. And Emma, please just jump in if you want me to stop. But I think for us, one of the biggest barriers was just the end-to-end process. How do we do this? How do we start? We've got different types of devices, whether it's a phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a laptop. And as Elizabeth and others have talked around, we've got different levels of quality of products. But I think for us, that's where finding great partners has really played an important role in this. And we've been able to have a really flexible approach depending on what it is that we're collecting in. So we kind of have two processes that we run in tandem. One that we run with Good Things Foundation and their device bank for if it's more than 10 devices that we're receiving through a donation or that we're making, and then we can fit straight into their process and they take care of the rest. Where it's that smaller number, where it's harder, understandably, for Good Things to step in and take care of those smaller numbers. And it's typically also when it's our own devices, it's those smaller numbers. That's where we have our own internal process where we work with our supplier Ingram, and they take care of that collection of the device, the data wiping, the resetting of the device. So I think that's been a good thing for us, is being able to have flexibility depending on what it is and the numbers that we're working with. The data security piece, we've all touched on that as a key barrier, but again, through the processes of different partners. And I think it is just that education piece, and the likes of Reconomy, who I don't know if Reconomy are on this call, but are brilliant in terms of the certification and the accreditation and just the confidence that they can give in terms of how securely that device has been reset, so that you're confident as an organization that it is safe and fit to be used again. And then I think the final one for us was kind of just that buy-in and awareness from the organization as to why they should do this. And I think I kind of touched at the beginning around how it aligns with our own strategy. So I think I'd kind of try and start there, find something as an organization that you're already trying to do and see how you can tie it into this. And you may not be focusing on digital divide, but as we've all talked about, we all have our own environmental goals that we're going after. So there'll always be something you can try it back to. Stories and case studies are so powerful in this space. I know we've already had various quotes and stories put up here, but when you can talk about the benefits that people who are receiving those devices, that just speaks volumes when you're talking to your colleagues internally. And then all of the incentives that Ellie touched upon are absolutely valid. And then the only other ones I was going to say is that for us as well, we're a huge employer and we're always looking at how can we make employees want to come and work for Vodafone, be proud to work for our organisation, and also they're our biggest advocates. And so being able to talk to our employees about how we are reusing their tech has been a real big advocate for us. We've been working on, we kind of are talking about measurement here. We work with an organisation called the Social Value Portal, and we've been starting to look at how can we put a pound value on some of this to be able to talk about the social value that we're delivering through these programmes. And I think once we can start to kind of make more progress in that space, that's then an even bigger incentive that we'll be able to talk about in terms of the impact that it's having. I could say lots more, but I might pause there because I know that Jess has probably got lots to say as well, but hopefully that's a little bit of a helpful insight.
Absolutely, Rachel. That is so brilliant, so inspiring. And I am going to invite Jess now to come in and build on that story.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess Reddy. I'm part of the social impact team at Deloitte and I am the digital inclusion lead. So like Rachel, get the joy of managing our laptop donation programme amongst other things. I'm going to hide you because I can see myself and that's really off-putting. So there's a few things I wanted to talk about, and actually I think conversely to Rachel's experience, ours was actually fairly easy to get off the ground. Probably because we started it during COVID, so 2021 we started device donation, but also because it came to me via my CEO who had an email from one of our colleagues saying, I'm watching the news, there's loads of children who can't study, we have got lots of devices, what are we doing with them? And so actually it was fairly easy for me to get the program up and running. I appreciate that won't be the same for everyone. But we have about 25,000 employees around the UK. We refresh our laptops about every 3 years. So we've got a really steady flow of devices, and we donate all of our what we call end of life devices. But as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, they're not useless. They have life left in them, and we wanted to give them a second life. I know we haven't got a lot of time, but I was just going to cover the way we distribute. There's lots and lots of questions, happy to take things offline, but we distribute through lots of different ways. So we donate quite a lot to the Good Things Foundation Device Bank. We have also got a network of our own schools and charity partners who are able to apply for devices. Our people can nominate schools and charities, so we get a lot of parents. We've got a huge school governor network who work in low socio-economic areas, and we get a lot of requests coming from those kinds of approaches. I think in terms of some of the challenges, I know Rachel said definitely storytelling is really important. It absolutely is 100%. I think where we go through organisations like Good Things, we're able to get that data easily. We're able to get those stories and those case studies. Where we struggle is when we are going and giving them to smaller organisations, schools directly, individuals directly. It's a lot harder to get those kind of stories back and the impact back. So I think having a blend sometimes is quite helpful because we can still understand how it's making a difference, but we don't necessarily get all of those individual stories back. I'm going to stop because I know we're really running late on time, but really happy to take any questions kind of in the chat or whatever going forward.
Jess, thank you so much. Tash, I'm going to ask you to start loading up so that Natasha can then talk through. We thought it would be a bit helpful to explain a little bit about the National Device Bank. And so Natasha, just a few minutes on the Device Bank would be amazing. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Tasha can move it on. Thank you. So the National Device Bank was set up in 2022 to work at scale through an integrated partnership with Reconomy. We offer a UK-wide service for the collection, processing and redistribution of disused tech. it was really great to hear about the pilot that DSIT are about to undertake with DPA. And I think we need more and more organisations testing this out for themselves. But I wanted to use this opportunity to shout out to the organisations that already have been leading the way. And special thanks, Rachel and Jess, I know from Vodafone and Deloitte, as you are critical to that for the Good Things Foundation scaling. But we've already been working with public and private sector organisations to go beyond that traditional IT asset disposal services, securely giving old tech new life for people that can't afford their own, but at the same time ensuring the responsible disposal of tech which can't be reused. And I want to share a little bit more about how that works on the next slide. So I'm not going to go into too much on this, but if you want the one pager of how this works, I will put my email in the chat and you can for sure just request this slide. But the couple of things that I wanted to pull out from here is that we have a robust process that is secure, quality accredited, quality assured, that has been working at scale for 3 years now. And through that, we've learned a lot of lessons and we have a process of continuous improvement. So again, if you're thinking about doing this as an organisation, there are ways that you can partner with others to enable you to get going and start that journey off, and maybe even take it off your hands and do it for you. Because the other thing that I wanted to point out is that all devices are given to digitally excluded people, and they're able to use them to benefit their lives, but they also can be paired with data connectivity and skills support, because the way that we distribute devices is through hundreds of community organisations that are based all over the UK. And those organisations are working within their communities and they already know who is digitally excluded, who needs support, and they know how to give them the support that's tailored to their specific needs. So they request the device, they work with the individual, they help them to get set up, and they support them on their onward digital inclusion journey. So that's all I'm going to mention there, but if you want that slide, please do request it in the chat or send me an email. I want to get straight into the impact. So this is not new stuff. 75 organisations have already started this. They're already working with us through the National Device Bank. So it is possible. And 36% of those organisations have already repeated their contribution. You heard Jess mention that you have like refresh rates. So not everybody has tech all of the time, but as they come to refresh their tech and they enter a new refresh cycle, they're coming back to us and asking us to repeat what we've done with them before. As a consequence of that, nearly 560 what we call digital inclusion hubs have received devices for their community. These organisations are based within their communities and range from homeless shelters to libraries to adult education providers, food banks, you name it. If you're an organisation that is helping people in your community, you can access these devices for the people that you support. Thanks to all of these embedded partnerships that we've got, over 17,000, nearly 18,000 digitally excluded people have received a device so far from the National Device Bank. But it's not just about social impact. You know, we talked a little bit about the fastest growing waste stream. We're collecting so much data, not only about the social benefits of receiving a device, but also the environmental benefits as well. So we've avoided 114,000 kilograms of e-waste, and that's through nearly 65,000 assets being reused and or recycled with zero waste to landfill. And the carbon emissions that we're avoiding from not having to buy new devices, imagine buying 18,000 new devices and the carbon emissions that that's putting into the atmosphere. We're avoiding that through reusing tech. You're avoiding that through reusing your tech. So it's really, really important not just think about this from a social impact, but also an environmental impact. If we move on to the next slide, it's really important that you get data. We've talked a lot about data so far in this session. And so there's some really core housekeeping data. So you need your data erasure certificates. You need to know that waste compliance has been followed if a device can't be reused. Each device has a final destination record, so we know the outcome of that piece of tech. And as well as reporting on the number of devices received and reused, avoided emissions and prevented waste, we also share stories of social impact, and we can provide templates so that you can easily share that good news with your staff and your customers too. We work at scale across the nations. So devices have been distributed into all regions and all nations across the UK. We do continue to scale, but demand consistently outstrips supply, which is why I'm so pleased that we're now having this collective effort to do more. Before I close, I just want to say I've seen lots and lots of comments in the chat about local refurbishment schemes. And one of the points that I want to mention within the toolkit is signposting. We're working in partnership with Material Focus and Recycle Your Electricals to ensure that all of those local schemes, because we do not want to cannibalise local schemes, we want to amplify and help those local schemes to thrive. So we're working in partnership with Material Focus and Recycle Your Electricals to get as many of those local refurbishers onto their locator, onto their directory. So if you're in the chat and you were asking that question, please do email me, because I want your details. I want to get you on the locator so that more donating organisations can find you. And if they don't want to work at scale across the nations, if they want to work hyper local, they can work through you.
That is brilliant, Natasha. And I think that is a really important message here, because there is something about getting this working means a lot of different people involved, a lot of different sectors, but also a lot of different levels, from the hyperlocal to the national, and that being UK, as well as thinking about devolved nations. And so it's really great, actually, that we've got some of that mix, but not all of that mix represented in the advisory working group. But I think, as Natasha said, that link with Material Focus is really, really important for recognising, I suppose, how we all can work together to try and build a better nationwide ecosystem that helps to achieve this. And it's also why I've been really, really glad, actually, that Elizabeth, DPA, you've been able to join in this meeting today, and we've been able to kind of give the whole package of the work that government is taking forward in terms of its first steps in this area. One of the things that I'm really interested in hearing about is there've been a lot of questions in the chat that have been about the demand, and actually also a lot of responses that have been about the demand. And almost anyone locally doing it, we know from community organisations, it came up in terms of Elizabeth and responses to your pilot as well, is that demand is absolutely outstripping supply here. And I think one of my reflections then is this is why it's so helpful to hear from those who are already doing this and have been doing this, because we know whether it's easy or hard to get off the ground, actually building it into the business as usual is going to be really, really important for continuing to meet that demand, because I don't see that demand falling away whilst we have such need for digital inclusion and devices get broken and people can't afford to replace them. So I suppose one of the other reflections is I'm really curious about if there's anyone here who is looking to donate devices and interested in this. And it would be great to have questions from you about what you would like to see in the playbook, what sort of support you would like to see through the charter management process and those conversations that Ellie was talking about. What sort of support might be helpful to hear from people like Jess and Rachel, and there are others in the room from public sector organisations, as well as voluntary sector, as well as private sector organisations who have experience of doing this. And I think that those are the sorts of questions that would just be like gold dust to us. So I just wanted to put that out as a bit of a provocation. If you work within an organisation that's interested in doing this, then please do pop any questions in the chat. okay, so I'm going to pick, so I've just seen there are a few here. This is great. Keep them coming. We won't answer them all, but I've seen there's some about minimum spec. Yes, we're thinking that we should include that in the playbook, especially in terms of that quality piece. Yes, we think that there are definitely things about de-risking and also how anyone might need to make decisions about what sort of maybe ITAD relationship they're looking for. One of the things to flag is that we feel it isn't, this is where the relationship with material focus comes up, is we don't have the resource to do like quality checks and create a sort of kite mark. That could be something that comes in due course. But this first version of the playbook is not going to be able to go, here are lots and lots of trusted sources that have been kind of tested and we can vouch for, but it is going to be pointing to other places where you could find a bit more support. I noticed also earlier there was a great question about the Windows 10 end of life. So again, that's also something that we are going to feature in the playbook. So it was really great to have these sorts of questions coming up about the quality and about the benchmark. And that's something that with the advisory group, we're thinking through at the moment. Ellie, is there anything in the last few minutes you would want to talk about or mention in terms of information that you're looking for from people for the charter management process? Or
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Emma. I guess like my main takeaway from all of this is that if you do have any feedback that you think it would be really important for us to hit, especially at a local level, we really do welcome any feedback. You've got the email address for the digital inclusion mailbox and my own personal email address. So please do send it in, because I think something that I am very aware of as a policy official is that this has been developed and worked on at more of a national level than perhaps like a local level. However, we do really want to expand the charter and keep up the momentum and the impact of it. And this includes ensuring that local organisations and small medium businesses feel empowered to engage with device donation as well. So if you have any ideas of how we can expand the reach of the charter and ensure it's appropriate for all size of businesses, please do get in touch with us. And similarly, if you have any feedback for us on the pilot, or if you would like to know anything more about it, please do reach out to myself or the inbox. I'm always very happy to provide more information on how such a fantastic project came about. And one final thing that I would just like to say on the call is, firstly, thank you everyone for taking the time to come along to the show and tell. We really appreciate you giving up your valuable time to hear us talk about device donation. And thank you to our working group as well, who have been providing brilliant feedback for us on the charter, and to our steering group, which includes Good Things Foundation, Deloitte and Vodafone. You guys have been fantastic as well from a DSIT perspective. And thank you to Elizabeth for all of her work on the pilot. So lots of thank yous to wrap up the end of the show and tell.
Brilliant. That is amazing, Ellie. As Natasha says, we're going to share the slides out with you. Please do pass the word on to others. We will get in touch with all of you when we have a date for the charter launch. And we're probably looking at an in-person event, but I'm sure that will also be followed by other online opportunities to find out more and to sign up. If you're up for being a signatory, we would particularly love to hear from you. Okay, take care. Thanks ever so much, Ellie. Thank you so much to you and to Rebecca and to all colleagues. Take care, everyone. Bye.